Okay, thank you very much. I would like to start by thanking Frank Bovenkerk and the Royal Academy of Flanders to invite me to this symposium and to give me the opportunity to reply on the draft report and Frank's work on ethnic diversity and delinquency. Frank and I met some time ago in Amsterdam and had a long conversation on this topic and how it was studied in Belgium compared to the Netherlands. I remember that we agreed on most, if not all, during that conversation. Hence, I was not surprised to find a similar level of agreement in reading the draft report on this topic. In my reaction to the report, I will isolate and focus on 3 points of agreement. As academics tend to do then, this would open up the opportunity to politely disagree on most elements, but this will not be my objective today. So the 3 points of agreement are, first of all, the data on which research on this topic can be based. Second, the research itself. And third, the broader debate surrounding this topic and the outcome of research on this topic. Also, I must say that due to a very busy exam period, this reaction is perhaps a little shorter and definitely less elaborated as I would wish, although I attach great value to the work of the thinkers and this program. So, I come to my first point, being data on ethnicity and delinquency. In the draft report, Frank Bovenkerk rightly states that it's somewhat surprising to see that in the land of Adolphe Quetelet, the founding father of criminography, barely any figures are available on the relation between ethnic background and delinquency. One of the explanations for this lack of data is our, and I quote, reluctant Belgian attitude, by which Frank refers to the taboo on gathering, as he mentioned just a minute ago, the taboo on gathering data and doing research on crime and delinquency, or crime and ethnicity. This taboo originated from the debate on the study by Marion van San, commissioned by Minister of Justice Mark Verwilgen, in a period, which was also mentioned by Frank, where an extreme right-wing political party stirred up the emotions and set to a certain extent the political agenda. I agree that looking upon this debate from the Netherlands, this anxious attitude seems and perhaps also is odd. However, in a special issue of the Dutch Journal of Criminology, colleagues from the Netherlands also mentioned that perhaps the openness and no-nonsense approach to this topic in the Netherlands might also be a typical Dutch peculiarity, at least in some surrounding countries, such as Germany, France, and the UK. This openness towards gathering data on crime and ethnic background is not self-evident either. Nevertheless, and this is where we absolutely agree, Belgium has a poor history and reputation on gathering official data in general, in my opinion, and more specifically on this issue related to crime and insecurity more in particular. I have 2 illustrations of this regrettable tradition in mind. First, and studying youth crime, which is my domain, this is extremely important. Official police statistics on the population of known suspects only recently added age as a background variable. Before, we had no idea of the proportion of minors who are involved in crimes, at least as a suspect, based on police statistics. Age is the second of 2 background variables that is now available. Gender was the first one. So we have only 2. In that sense, I think it's important that indeed we have no idea about nationality, let alone ethnic background, if you look at those police statistics of the population of known suspects in our police records. A second illustration is the loss of our Belgian safety monitor, the Veiligheidsmonitor, being the only large-scale representative victim survey in our country. Not only did Belgium run behind in establishing this type of survey in 1998. Many countries were 10 years, 20 years before Belgium. It only lasted about 10 years. So since 2008, we have no survey data with a representative sample of people living in our country on victimization, fear of crime, attitudes towards the police, and so on. My second point of agreement relates to the research on crime and ethnic background itself. In our own research, based on samples of young people living in the cities of Antwerp, Brussels, and Ghent, we indeed observed differences in self-reported delinquency between youngsters from a different ethnic background. We, however, follow and confirm Frank Bovenkerk again in stating that the concept of cultural or ethnic background should and cannot be used in an essentialist way. Crime and differences in crime levels cannot be explained by simply looking at an attribute such as ethnic background, similar to the idea that being a boy or a man does not predict crime either, although boys or men commit more crimes compared to girls or women. Explaining a complex phenomenon like crime will hence need complex explanations. In our research, we found differences in crime between youngsters of different ethnic backgrounds. But the association between crime and ethnic background decreased when taking into account variables related to the criminological theories and etiological research on crime that was already mentioned. More specifically, one of the significant variables explaining those differences in self-reported delinquency in schools is school experiences and well-being at school, which refers perhaps to the first part of this symposium. In that sense, again, we follow Frank in stating that although, again, there are differences in crime levels between different groups, the pathways to and explanations for committing crime do most of the time not differ between different ethnic groups. Some of these explanations, however, are related to culture, are related to ethnic backgrounds, but again, not in a straightforward way. One of our PhD students is currently looking into the influence of anticipated shame and guilt in explaining youth delinquency. The hypothesis of his PhD is that these emotions, important emotions, might help to explain away the gender gap in self-reported crime, but there are good reasons to think that this is equally important to explain differences in crime based on ethnic background. This brings me to my third and final point, related to the broader debate surrounding this topic and the outcome of research on this topic. At several places in the draft report, Frank Bovenkerk refers to the possibility of unequal treatment based on ethnic background in our police force and criminal justice system. Based on procedural justice theory and empirical studies on this matter, we indeed know of the possible detrimental effects of this on legitimacy of the criminal justice system, police cooperation, and even obedience to the law. In line with the model of social vulnerability, which was also mentioned in the report, or, for example, McCarra and McVee's negotiated order theory, I tend to believe that these adversarial contacts with the criminal justice system are perhaps only the end phase of a history of harming and negative experiences with a number of other social institutions, such as school, employment, and housing as well. Willem Schinkel, a Dutch sociologist, points to the paradoxical situation where our society asks people to integrate, while at the same time, be it intentionally or unintentionally, denying them the possibility to integrate. In a way, this situation is reproduced already in the categories that we use to describe these groups, and also that we use in our research. Categories such as allochtone versus autochtone, or first, second, and third generation immigrants that by now do not longer reflect the complexity or new normality in our society, but are used to distinguish between those who are not a part of our society and have to integrate, and those, on the other hand, who have dispensation of integration. I would like to end here. Thank you.